Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 118.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards. On today's episode, I'm joined by my pal, Dr. Horatio Jug, and we answer a question, or I should say a comment that was left on one of our Facebook posts about how subluxation based chiropractic is dead. Obviously, it's not. The headline is a little bit of clickbait, but don't worry, we get into the topic and we uncover the reasons why not only is it not dead, but it's more than a viable way to practice. I think it's actually the safest, it's the most enjoyable, not to say that other ways to practice aren't, so you need to pick the path that works for you. I know you'll enjoy today's episode. If you haven't or already do not receive our Life by Design dailies, that's a daily email or video that shows you how to build your practice in 3 minutes or less, then make sure you go ahead and check out our Instagram bio and you can sign up for those there. Until then, thank you for listening to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic. Horatio, welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors.
Jamie, happy to be here as always.
Yes. Had an interesting comment today, or I guess earlier this week, on one of our lead magnets that was flowing around the internet. And if you haven't seen that, then you can look for it. It was about our retention-based practice dailies, where we're sending out videos and emails on a regular basis that you can consume in 3 minutes or less and start to grow your practice. So that said, the comment was interesting because it essentially said, subluxation-centered chiropractic is dead. And that was essentially the gist of the comment. And, we needed to go into a model where we were seeing different types of cases and, no longer getting people under long-term care. And obviously we disagreed with that. So we thought that discussing that today would be a valuable podcast for people to dig into.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a lot to unpackage. It's one of those things, and we're seeing this around the world, right? It's we're almost like at the age of sound bites, and people love sound bites. And the people who propagate the sound bites, it's hard to unpack some of these ideas, right? But I think it's important because I think there is a concern. We're in a place in the world now where I know a lot of practices that are still struggling.
Sure.
Australia's entered. Australia's back under lockdown. I'm actually going to predict that we're going to be flirting with that idea when flu season. I'm glad we have video now, right? I'm making the air quotes when flu season hits in Canada, I think that'll be something that people are requesting. So there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of concern. And then, practices are struggling. So people start thinking along these lines of like, oh my God, I have to, I always knew this was kind of the wrong way to do it. What do I have to do? So let's, because I think the argument is good. I think, he voiced the concern of a lot of people. Probably could have been a little bit kinder in the way that it was,
well, Isn't that every comment that is usually made by, I don't want to say a troll, but any comment that's usually made by someone leaving a contradictory or not a contrasting statement on a Facebook post? I know I had previous ones on the same, or actually it was on our marketing blueprint ad that was running so people could download.
You got to send them to me. You got to send them to me when you get them, because I don't get notified right all the time.
Somebody was literally like, their language was like, I'm appalled. This is classic. I'm appalled that you're promoting this. It was the marketing blueprint. You're basically like, you're sleazy and you're trying to take money. And my comment back was, you're appalled that I'm teaching chiropractors how to market successfully so they can help people? I'm not understanding your point. But nonetheless, we were talking about the subluxation-centered chiropractic is dead. I think if you didn't dig in deeper, the point on the surface might seem valid, right? This idea that, people are no longer interested in, this long-term repetitive checking and correcting, subluxation only assembly line. Yeah. And of course, there's so many false beliefs that are built into that statement that.
Yeah, we got to talk about them though.
Yeah. So, obviously the one I think that is valuable, and I'll let you talk about what you think, but to me, sure. What's the difference between subluxation-centered chiropractic done very well, analysis, correction, monitoring, education? What's the difference between that and, ongoing fitness? or working with a nutrition coach or going to a dentist. I mean, you see your dentist less, but you get the idea. Nobody is shying away from anything that they find valuable, whether it's something they do on a repetitive basis or not.
Yeah. So I think I totally agree with that. We need to take a step back first, because there's sneaky terms snuck in here, right? Okay. Number one is evidence-based care and patient-centered care.
Sure.
Right. And it's used by the same group of chiropractors. Number one, patient-centered care means we don't get to dictate to the patient what they accept as care. Patient-centered care means the patient gets what they want, right? You're telling me that my care isn't patient-centered, but neither is yours, because you're forcing them into one stream that they might not want, right? The fact that people show up freely into my practice, say, yes, I'm not lying, I'm not coercing them, I'm not forcing them, I'm giving them the facts, and they're saying, yes, this sounds good. They vote with their dollars. That is patient-centered.
Right, exactly.
Right. Well, and there is evidence to support this type of chiropractic care. And my purpose in saying this, right, is we need to, this is one of the things in the profession that we need to combat right away, because these are the things that, people accept. Oh, it hurts your self-esteem. Oh, there's no evidence to support what I'm doing, right? I'm coercing people. It's not patient-centered. No. Right? Patient-centered means that the person has the freedom to choose. Right. There's articles to suggest that what we're doing is helpful, right? There's research to suggest it. So we're doing just fine, right? Let's start with those premises before we even get to the rest of the stuff.
Right. Yes, Andy, would you like to join the podcast today? This is a live recording. Would you like to join in? For those listening, we're joined today by my daughter, Andy, and she has a question for the podcast goers.
Can you please give me a checkup?
Oh, well, that's actually a great question. And yes, I can.
The girls were stepping on my back.
Your spine?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see you in a bit. Well, at least you can. At least the listeners can be happy that my children are educated about subluxation based chiropractic care, and they would like to get their spines checked. But you're right. This idea of patient-centered care and somehow that we have to be dictated to as a healthcare provider, you think about it in a different experience.
It's insanity.
Right? It's insanity to think that, I'm going to go to my cancer specialist, right? And I'm going to say, what do you think? And they're going to say, well, here's what I think, you need this. And again, it doesn't matter whether we agree or disagree as healthcare providers. But the point is, for the majority of people, they're going to say,
but they have a thing that they do, right? They have
right. And so if that's what you want, that's what you get. And of course, you can opt out. You can say, you know what, I'm not going to go through. I mean, you and Rochelle both have had cancer and gone through and opted out and gone a different path. And lots of people have.
That's not the point, though.
No, but the point is, it was fine. You opted out. They said okay, and then away you went. You weren't upset that they wouldn't manage your case and not do what they did, but still interact with you. That's my point. And so it's no different in a chiropractic office, a subluxation based office in this example. You were talking before the show just about, what kind of dictates our acceptance into our practice and accepting a case, and this idea of a timeline and a certain number of visits. And, it's not asking a lot. I'm not asking for their limb or their second child. I'm simply saying, for me to get a result that you're asking me to get, based on the test results, the objective test results, here's what I need to do. Oh, you don't want to do that? Okay, that is totally fine. I'm not going to strong arm you. I'm not going to twist you. I'm not going to manipulate you.
In fact, I'll kindly refer you to somebody who does it better than me.
That's right. There's a person down the street. We have an office in our community. I'm like, look, if that's what you want, let me get you into that office. Right? I can get you in there as soon as possible, and let's make sure that's the right fit for you. But if we're going to start the process, we've got to at least get from A to B and have an agreement on what that's going to look like. And I mean, outside the fact that it's all possible, subluxation-centered chiropractic is not dead. It's to me the best way to practice. And even if you're practicing traditional care, I would still have an agreement with the patient as to what was going to happen. Let's say the goal or outcome a traditional chiropractor had was, pain relief. I'd say, great, then I'm going to see you every day I'm open until you're not in pain. right? I'm going to have an agreement, and it's going to be based on what I need to do to get you the result. So you're right. There's patient-centered care. There's the misnomer of evidence-based care, as if subluxation-based care has no evidence. And when people say, oh, there's no evidence. Well, there's lots of evidence. It's just a matter of, what you qualify as evidence. And then the flip side is, what's your standard? How is your standard any different than the standard I'm being held to?
Yeah. What's your RCT on ART,
Exactly. So not only is subluxation-centered chiropractic not dead, I think it's the best way to practice. I think it's the safest way to practice. I think it's the most appropriate way to practice to yield the biggest result.
So, but here's go ahead. Yeah. So the other thing that we need to unpackage here is the idea that the idea that goes along with it's an assembly line, and you really don't care about the person, right? In my experience, any doctor, the most successful doctor in any profession, and if you're in chiropractic and you actually don't care about people, no matter how you practice, you really need to do something where you care about the people that you are seeing, right? Because a service, any type of service, where it's a valuable service, it delivers a result that's been proven over time, which chiropractic is, and the doctor actually cares about the people, it will never fail. You will never fail with that type of service. So to assume, to make the inherent assumption that somehow that because of the way that I choose to practice, right, is because I don't care about people, instead of because I care about people, I choose to practice this way.
Right.
I feel bad for somebody that would think along those terms.
Well, and it reminds me a lot of just the conversation that goes on in terms of a free market, right? I was just, out of interest's sake, I was Googling around and watching some Ayn Rand YouTube videos back in the day, and Phil Donahue, and she was talking about, the time where the oil industry had what he called a monopoly, and the gas prices were going through the roof. And she's like, look, this doesn't happen in a free market. In a real free market where people aren't getting special favors and other things like that, the market takes care of it. And the same is true here. If you're a bad doctor, you're going to get crushed in the market because people are going to make decisions based on the experiences that they get. And the fact that, thousands of wonderful subluxation-centered chiropractic offices are still operating and growing, and, to use ones that are struggling, I mean, that's not necessarily evidence that it's on the way out. It's evidence that those offices could be bad offices. They could have bad systems. They could have bad doctors. They maybe, aren't working hard enough. I mean, our report card has 40 different areas that you could easily look at. And I'm pretty sure there's a good pile of them that aren't optimized in many of the offices that struggle, both subluxation centered and otherwise. I think what's more important, and this would be my final point, and then I'll throw back to you, Cratio, is that I think you have to have a core product, and it doesn't even matter what your core product is. It just matters that people want your core product, or you've positioned it as a solution to a problem that people want to solve. You have a great experience wrapped around your core product. And for sure, you can, as I said in the comment and my answer to this person's comment, you can extend, your offerings into different areas that do diversify, whether you have some online offerings, some product offerings, other services. I think they need to be connected to the core product. So if you're subluxation analysis and correction, your core product looks a certain way. If you're pain relief, it looks a certain way. If you're, athletic care, it looks a certain way. All of them can be successful. I don't think the fact that being subluxation based versus not is the defining criteria.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's excellent. I'm going to leave my final thoughts to the bigger picture, because there's people who are really affected by the things that they read and they hear. And you really need to hone your philosophical BS meter, right? And really be able to think principally about these things, and not to accept something just because somebody's trying to force it down your throat. You really got to be sharp on recognizing the bankrupt ideas at the bottom of some of this stuff, especially in 2020, man, because life is just full of horrible ideas.
There's never been a more important time than now to be clear on your philosophy, to build your self-esteem, to create a vision, and to have an action plan that yields the results that connect to your values.
And just one more comment before we wrap it up. There's also never been a time where the result of years of bad thinking has come to a climax.
For sure. And just remember, guys, we've got a lot of extra thoughts here. And one more thing.
One more.
I'm going to one up you here, Horatio. There is a lot of fear that exists in the marketplace and with chiropractors for sure. And I hear it from, clients and people online. And I would just say there's also a lot of opportunity. It's always the case when there's a lot of downside. There's always a huge opportunity for upside. And I know for our particular practice, it's never been busier ever in the history of time. I've never seen it like this. We've been working towards growth forever and ever. And, whether it's just the right time, I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot of things going on that are pushing people towards wanting to take action on their lives. We're seeing it in the home renovation industry where people are like, well, I'm going to be at home, so I'm going to work on my house. I'm seeing it in the health industry where people are thinking, well, I'm going to do less of these other things. So why don't I focus on my health right now? So there's huge opportunity in the health marketplace right now. So make sure you get your head on straight and make sure you don't get distracted by, as Horatio said, a lot of the poor thinking that goes on out there. And make sure you have a plan and make sure it's connected to your values. So guys, go to the show notes, lifebydesignforchiropractors.com/podcast. Find today's episode. And thank you for listening to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic.